Welcome back from the ad break. You are still watching Prime Live. Now, up next is my conversation with tech expert Brendon Peterson, and we will be speaking about the crisis of AI generated academic assignments. Now, we do know that the proliferation of ChatGPT has raised serious concerns amongst academic institutions regarding the authenticity of student work, the integrity of grading, and the overall value of university degree. Now, we are joined by Brendon, who is a tech expert, like I mentioned, and he is going to just discuss with us the evolving crisis of these AI generated academic assignments, specifically the use of ChatGPT and similar tools in South African universities. Thank you so much for joining us, Brendon, and welcome to Prime Live.
Thanks so much for having me.
Now, let's jump right into it. Can you describe the capabilities of ChatGPT and similar AI language models in generating written content and the way students might be using these tools to produce assignments?
Yeah, sure. So ChatGPT, and things like Claude, even Gemini, these are AI models which are capable of generating human-like text. And that's a very important distinction because, a lot of people think that AI can just generate things out of thin air. All it can do is essentially follow a pattern, follow a sequence, based on information that it's been trained on. So it's not
Mm,
generating things from scratch. It's just following a logical sequence. But
mm,
these tools can help students, with a variety of tasks,
mm,
generating essays, explaining complex concepts, and students have been using these tools in various different ways. Obviously, we've mentioned, things like essays, but also clarifying academic topics. You can do things like sum up, if you get a large batch of notes, you can sum it up with AI so you get the key points out of it. So it's essentially a tool that can be used in various different ways, from generating or sort of creating content based on logic, or it can be used to sum up existing content that you provided with.
mm. And what do you think are the potential long term implications of these AI generated work in academia?
It's such a nuanced, multifaceted question because the answer is not as simple as people think. Unfortunately, people think it's just
Mm,
one thing or the other. But while tools like AI, AI tools like ChatGPT and those sort of other things, they give you opportunities for learning and summarizing things. Obviously, there are concerns about academic integrity because
mm,
if you have a tool that's going to allow you to essentially put in a perfect, essay or answer, whatever, without having to do the work, then obviously that's a concern. So that then raises questions about the way we've been assessing these essays and assessments. Is that the way we should continue to do that?
mm,
However, I think if used responsibly, AI can actually enhance learning. It can make tasks and these subjects a lot more sort of consumable for people who maybe can't understand these things because we all learn in different ways. So
mm.
I think again it's a case of how do we use the technology instead of outright banning it and sort of alienating people from wanting to use this technology.
Hmm. And we've heard a lot of universities, colleges obviously making remarks on the use of ChatGPT to say, should they find a student using it, they will be, suspended or even, sometimes banned from writing an exam or participating in an examination. Do you think universities would ever get to a point where they eliminate the use of ChatGPT holistically? And if not, or do you think, or what do you think universities can do to manage this whole ChatGPT crisis?
We've obviously seen the concerns raised, university level and below
Mm,
about the use of ChatGPT for these, shall we just call them negative circumstances,
mm,
as a potential cheat tool and that sort of thing.
mm,
But if you look overseas, there are professors who, and probably even locally, who can, are seeing it as a tool that can be used to actually help students.
mm,
So for example, you could use it as a way to focus on complex tasks while AI, in the meantime, is handling more repetitive things. For example, you go to class, you're taking notes, or there's just too many things. There are AI tools that can record it and then summarize bullet points of the lesson that you've just been presented or help you highlight the key tasks
mm,
or key points that were made. So I think the key to this is balance and finding a way to incorporate AI into the learning rather than undermining it, but also unfortunately, we know when new technologies come along, people are going to take advantage of it, whether good or bad. You know, AI is just another one of those examples. And I don't think that the right approach is to outright ban it because the more you sort of ban anything, the more people are driven to want to use it. So I think it's a case of showing students and people the good, the bad, how and why it shouldn't be used. Because, obviously, with a lot of AI generated content, there's a lot of hallucinations. And that's one of the easy ways to pick up when something is purely AI generated. And I think if people know that and they have an understanding of the content material, you can use it to say maybe draft an outline or help you pick at certain points, but not write the entire thing. So I think the balanced approach is what needs to be taken here instead of the knee-jerk reaction to, new technology, we should outlaw it.
Mm. No, totally. I think you said something very interesting in the beginning of the interview, saying that at the end of the day, AI or ChatGPT is something that needs to be prompted, which means that you can't necessarily be not concentrated or not knowing what you're saying if you're going to prompt it to write an assignment. It's coming from a place of knowledge. It's just there to make it easy for you. But then, how do you see AI and education coexisting in the future?
As I said, I think it should be a balanced approach, and I really think it should be used as a learning aid. Not a shortcut, not a replacement for doing the work, but an enhancement to help you understand the material more deeply, understand the subject more deeply, and as I said, for example, maybe draft an outline so you know what the key points are. And I think if you sort of look at it from that perspective, and you still keep educators in that sort of key role of, fostering that sort of critical thinking and engaging their learners, I think then you can see AI as an enhancement tool, instead of as a replacement or a shortcut, which I think a lot of people see it as now.
No, definitely. And what are the opportunities that can arise from this this intersection between AI and education?
There's so many different things. I mean, I hesitate to say this, but, I think once it gets to a good level, you could even probably use AI to help automate things like, creating essays, assignments, that sort of thing. It could also automate other tasks so that, if you are an educator and you can see someone is struggling a bit more or you need to engage with him more, it can then sort of take on some of those more repetitive tasks, giving you more time to engage with students. As I said, also for students, again, it can help them with, studying. So, taking down notes and that sort of thing. It can also help present the information that you presented in the class in a different way, that maybe makes more sense to someone as opposed to this person sitting next to them, or providing explanations, that are on demand based on what you've just said, so I think things like that would be incredibly useful for students.
Mm. And often at times, especially now that the whole ChatGPT thing with assignments is becoming an issue, we often hear people say things like, "I'm so glad that I didn't acquire my degree during the times of ChatGPT," because it kind of gives them the validation to say that means I was a proper student. And compared to students that are now studying now, getting their degree, they kind of discredit their degrees to say, "Is it really because you got assistance from ChatGPT?" What do you have to say to such people?
That's such an interesting statement because I think if you look back over the history of technological evolution, I think we've heard similar sort of things when computers came along because, before, oh, we used to have to write our notes by hand. So therefore, we paid more attention and, our cognitive sort of thinking and critical thinking abilities were engaged more. That is not necessarily true. Just again, as this is not necessarily true. I think the key thing that we need to remember here is this is a tool that should be used to help, not to replace. And that doesn't mean that we use things like ChatGPT to replace critical thinking, and it doesn't invalidate, people who maybe use these tools to just take notes. So I think it is that sort of almost demonization that we've done with technology over the years every time there's a big jump. And I think that's the thing that I can almost understand, but we need to stop doing.
Hmm. But thank you so much, Brendan, for this informative session. I think viewers at home are left with no choice but to accept technology. I mean, AI is here to stay. I think it's time people conform to it instead of bashing it, and it's time for us to start using it so that we can better our lives. So thank you so much for giving us all the insightful information tonight.
Thanks so much for having me again.
Thank you so much. Viewers at home, that was an amazing conversation that I just had with Brendon Peterson, who is a tech expert regarding the use of AI or ChatGPT with academics or assignments. And I think or feel that you are probably left very well informed in terms of how you can incorporate it and actually use it as a tool rather seeing it as an enemy. But without wasting any time, we will go to a quick ad break. When we come back, we still have more for you, so stay tuned.